The Kristin Smart Case. A suspect is on trial 26 years later. So let me ask you, why did it take so long? We're going to answer that, plus give you an update on the case. This and more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. What some people are calling, well, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting. Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Today again, we're going to be sharing with you a most fascinating and yet frustrating case. Plenty of failure, interrupted with success. But again, now it's time to welcome you. We do appreciate the thousands of downloads we're seeing, and every one of you, we appreciate you for taking the time to listen to our podcasts. Those from the East Coast to the West Coast and beyond in other countries, you are appreciated. Now, as always, before we get to our case, we invite you to take time this week to reach out with a shout-out. Yep, you can reach me by emailing me directly, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Hey, if you have questions about the episodes, maybe suggestions about future episodes, please let us know. Or if you just want to reach out and say hi, we'd love to hear from you. Also, for those who have asked about supporting us in our endeavors, thank you for that. If you'd like to help, please go to peacemakernetwork.com. That's peacemakernetwork.com. There you'll not only be able to help us, but you'll be helping today's heroes, our law enforcement, first responders, the military. You can do that by becoming a badge, B-A-D-G-E, badge supporter for as little as $3. Now, you do know we are pro-law enforcement, and you often see these true crime stories. We always tell them from the eyes of a cop. But please know this, we are transparent. And when the police blow it, we're the first to point it out. You see, cops who really care, are cops who will face corruptions, racism, and incompetency with transparency. And that's exactly what we do on this podcast. Yet, my friend, we still stand tall for the overwhelming majority of these brave men and women who are honest, dedicated, and willing to lay down their lives for our personal safety. So let me invite you, become a badge supporter today. And for everybody who helps us, well, during this week of the publication of the episode, which is the first week of September, Labor Day week, well, we're going to give you a vacation voucher worth over $500. It's our way of saying thank you for becoming a part of our support group. Now again, that's peacemakernetwork.com. We'll lay that down in the show notes for you so you can just click on the link. Now to our main focus. On May the 24th, 1996, a beautiful young freshman by the name of Kristin Smart, well, she went missing from the Cal Poly campus in San Luis Obispo, California. She had attended a birthday party. She was being escorted home by 3 people at first, then 2 people, and finally, 1 person. That 1 person, he was a college freshman with the name of Paul Flores. He was the last one reportedly who saw her alive that night. And now he, Paul Flores, is on trial for her murder. And alongside him, well, it's his now 81 years old father, Ruben Flores, 81 years of age, who is also on trial for accessory after the fact. They allege he helped Paul to get rid of the body. And get this now, it has taken 26 years to bring them to the courtroom for, hopefully, justice. Now, we are going to talk about why it has taken that long to bring this case to the courtroom. But first, we do want to take the time to update you, give you an update on the trial. You see, it's important to update you on the trial because unlike many of our cases, well, my friend, you can't just follow this one on court TV because you know what? They're not allowing video or audio in the trial for publishing, that is. In other words, for now, we have to rely on reports from the reporters who are present in the courtroom and are following the trial in real time. Add to this, there's also a gag order keeping the attorneys and others from talking. So now, and over 6 weeks into the trial, now remember it's going to take a while, because both Paul and Reuben are being tried at the same time with 2 different juries. And, of course, 2 different defense lawyers taking their time to cross-examine the witnesses that the prosecution brings forth, witnesses to bring convictions, hopefully, in their eyes, against 2 people, Paul and his dad. So in the 6 weeks, the court proceedings, well, I think we can kind of give you a little summary there of what's going on. You see, first, we can definitely see the prosecution laying the groundwork regarding what I call Paul's pattern. In other words, a pattern of Paul's behavior, both before and after the disappearance of Kristin Smart. And this, my friend, comes from women who have first-hand experiences regarding the predatory behavior of Paul Flores. Now remember, we've told you in the past episodes about this case that there have been a total, get this, hold on to your hat, 29 women have come forth with accusations of being stalked, harassed, sexually assaulted, and raped. And all of this happening with a particular MO, that's called method of operations, to kind of make it plain so you can understand it. This MO, this method of operations, well, Paul, he would find them drinking. They were his ideal catch, and then he would drug them on top of that. That way he could have his way with them without their consent. You see, they simply would not be in any condition to consent, one way or the other. Now, the judge, he is not allowing all of these to testify. He thought that would be a little too much. But he has allowed a few of them to come and tell their story. And it is, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others, well, it is indeed compelling evidence. Compelling evidence that could give us a really good idea into what really happened to Kristin Smart those 26 years ago as she walked into the dark, never to be seen again. Now, most of these encounters with Paul were so-called one-night stands. Well, they stood as long as they could until Paul drugged them to where they could not stand again. But there was one testimony from one person who was a past girlfriend of Paul. Actually, he had a relationship for just a little while. And she told the jury about his propensity to anger, especially when he was drinking. How he had actually held a knife to her throat in a fit of rage. Now, get this, all this again is just laying the groundwork again for Paul's pattern of behavior. A pattern that fits very well into the narrative of the prosecution. That narrative that Paul drugged Kristin that night, got her along on the walk home, tempted to rape her in such a way, well, something went wrong, and he ended up killing her, either with intent or maybe accidental. Now, there's also been testimony of those who saw her and him that night at the birthday party. They testified that Paul was acting weird and was focused on Kristin that night, and in not a very good way. One such moment was when several shared how Kristin had fallen to the floor with a thud. Paul was standing over her, almost falling on her. Now, I should tell you that Paul, in his own statements to the police, well, he denied that this happened, even though several others saw it and testified to it. There was even a video that was introduced of Paul's own recorded police interview. It was shown that showed how he lied to the police that night about several things. One lie that stood out was how he was sporting a black eye, bruises, and scratches after the night that Kristin disappeared. You see, he lied about that because he told 3 different stories about his black eye. And that's been brought out in open court. First, he said it was at a pickup basketball game over the weekend. By the way, that was disputed by those who saw him before the basketball game. Next, he said, well, he got it working on a car, taking out a stereo. That was in a rather difficult to believe circumstances. And finally, one testified, well, he told him, well, he just woke up with it. Yep, just woke up, and boy, there it was. Don't know how he got there. Again, as I've already said in a past podcast, no wonder his lawyer told him to shut up. Now, in a moment, we're going to tell you about some of the most compelling evidence that's been introduced so far. But now, it's time for what we call our crazy story of the week, crook story, that is. We try to share a crazy crook story to lighten the load of these heavy podcasts. Well, this one, well, he was asleep, not at the wheel, but asleep at the still. That's right. An Ohio woman, she reportedly woke up to discover a burglar, now get this, napping in her guest bedroom. That was after he had broken up overnight, had taken a swim in her outdoor pool, and even eaten the family's leftover chicken. He just helped himself to everything in her house. That's what Stacy Stedman told the Associated Press of this crazy, bizarre break-in that occurred at her family home in Canton, Ohio, on a Monday morning. Now, Stedman, who lives with her husband, son, and her brother-in-law, she said that she saw a light was on in the spare room, and then she found this not-so-smart, crazy criminal snoozing. Now, this quick-thinking gal, whose husband, Raymond Pearson, he had already left for work before the invasion, well, she then went and woke up her brother-in-law, Brian Pearson, and Brian, he chased the intruder out of the home. Unfortunately, though, that was only the tip of the iceberg. You see, this distraught woman, she discovered the door to the backyard was open. And, get this, the man's sopping, wet trousers, well, they were laying by the pool, indicating that he had also taken a swim. That's what the AP reported. She added that the hungry criminal also apparently finished off the leftovers of the previous night's chicken dinner, and even lit a candle in the bathroom, just as though his home was a rental home, those Airbnbs. Well, before leaving, this creepy nabber, he even swiped a pair of her son's underwear. And so, my friend, here is a creepy, crazy crook who just may have gotten away of his break-in had he not taken time to take a nap. He was caught and charged. And that, my friend, is this week's crazy crook story of the week. Now back to our main focus. Coming up is the reason that this trial has taken so long. But updating you on what the jury has heard in the trial so far, there's some more compelling evidence. You see, this jury heard from dog handlers that had brought in cadaver dogs to the campus of Cal Poly. Now, these cadaver dogs conducted what is called blind searches. This means that the handlers, nor the dogs, were aware of any persons of interest or suspects, such as Paul Flores, and they did not have first-hand knowledge of where his dorm room was in the search. Now, 4 different dogs searched, and get this. The jury has heard the past couple of weeks how each of them, out of 600 students, they all hit on one room, Paul Flores' room. The jury was told how the sin of death can emerge just minutes after someone dies, and how these dogs hit on it at the entrance of Paul Flores' room. They also hit on the bed, the wastebasket, and the phone in Paul's room. At least 3 different dogs, 3 different handlers, hit all at the same place. Now, they also went into the dog's training as to not hit on food and trash and such things like that. You see, because they often have to search for bodies in that type of environment. That was also shared with the jury. I believe, to me, my friend, this was really compelling evidence going to the jury. Now, next, the police finally got really motivated, thanks mostly to a podcast by a fellow podcaster by the name of Chris Lambert. That podcast was called In Your Own Backyard. And they finally, after 20-some years, they executed a search warrant. They did this one properly. They used a ground-penetrating sonar, and they were able to show that how under the deck of Reuben Flores, Paul's father, there appeared to be what appeared to be a grave that had been dug, only then to be replaced. They also found through soil analysis, they were able to pick up what appeared to be human decomposition fluids. You see, it is believed that Kristin Smart's body had been buried there earlier, only to be dug up and moved as the podcast brought back focus on the Flores family. You see, a neighbor even testified she had seen activity one night with trucks and trailers coming into the yard in a suspicious manner. It is believed that may have been the night that Kristin's body had been moved. You see, even though the body had been buried maybe in a tarp, well, those fluids, those decomposition fluids, they could seep out into the soil, and that is indeed what they believe they found in the soil. Now, this is, again, really incredible testimony before the juries. Now, on top of that, the contractor, a guy by the name of Edward Chadwell, who built Reuben's house, he testified that in building the home, they did not find animal or human remains and no sign of serious injuries while building the house. That was to counter the possible defense, saying that the soil samples taken in the search of Reuben's home maybe had been compromised. Hey, there was even a roommate who testified how Reuben got upset when he was attempting to place 55-gallon empty buckets under the deck. He also said how Reuben stopped a plumber from his work when he became aware now that the plumber was going to have to work under the house. He stopped him. Wow, again. Pretty eye-opening testimony, isn't it? By the way, that same man said that he heard Reuben refer to Kristin as a slut, a dirty slut. Now, that's just a summary of some of the things the jury has heard. So we must now ask the question, with all this compelling evidence, even though a lot of it's circumstantial, why? Why has it taken that long, or this long, for it to go to trial? Now, we're going to share that with you in just a moment, but now it's time for a courageous story of the week. We also share a story about a courageous citizen. Now, we already shared with you how a podcaster by the name of Chris Lambert took it upon himself to start and produce the driving force that turned this frozen cold case into a hot case that's now being heard in open court. In fact, because of his interests, we also, Charlie Crimebuster, we produced a podcast about 2 years ago. That's when there had not been arrests, and it appeared there may not be in that case. 2 years ago, we did an episode on this very case. Well, now there's another one, another podcaster whose podcasting skills helped lead to an arrest. That's right. On January the 9th, 1982, there was a 33-year-old Lynn Dawson. She disappeared from her home in Sydney, Australia. She left behind 2 daughters and her husband, a physical education teacher by the name of Chris Dawson. Now, Chris, he alleged that Lynn had abandoned the family for a religious cult. However, on the day that she mysteriously vanished, Joanne Curtis, a student of Chris's, moved into the home. Now, police later came to the conclusion that she was likely murdered, but they were unable to retrieve a body, just like in this case, or gather enough evidence to arrest the suspect. But then, in May of 2018, another podcast was started. The Teacher's Pet, a guy by the name of Hedley Thomas, started that one. It took attention and focus on the Lynn's sudden disappearance. And this investigative podcast, well, just like this one that we've been telling you about, it too uncovered details surrounding Dawson's marriage, Chris's relationship with his student, and the shortcomings of the initial police investigation. And on December the 4th, well, police then arrested Chris for the murder of Lynn. That's what the New South Wales Police Commissioner, Mick Filler, said, that additional evidence, including 2 pieces unearthed by the podcast, helped them to tie the pieces of the puzzle together. So our courageous citizens of the week, both of them are podcasters, Chris Lambert and now Hedley Thomas. They are indeed what we call Charlie's Courageous Citizen of the Week. So now we have to ask, why did it take a podcast to bring Kristin Smart's murder to trial? And why did it take so long? First, no doubt, there was a slow response by police on this case. Even though it was a holiday weekend, we do all know that police, they do not go on holiday. They should and most often do stand 24/7 to protect and serve. They failed to do so in a timely manner in this case. You see, even though the people that knew her better on that weekend, they knew that something was wrong, and they alerted campus police and then the San Luis Obispo law enforcement. Neither of those agencies took her missing seriously. You see, Kristin went missing Friday into Saturday that week, and get this, it was not until Tuesday, that police took a missing persons report, despite the fact that they had been contacted earlier. Now, if they had been investigating that earlier, they would have seen that there were still things in Kristin's room that she left behind that she would not have left behind. And we all know now that the first 24 to 48 hours, well, they're crucial in such investigations. They blew that right out of the water. You see, it seemed that they spent more time trying to hand the case back and forth between the campus police and the sheriff's office than anything else. This was especially true in the early times that students attempted to get authorities on the case right away. Even Kristin's mom, Denise Smart, she commented that this case seemed to be a case without a lead agency. You see, the sheriff's office, they reported that they were merely assisting the Cal Poly campus police. And the Cal Poly police, well, they stated that the case was turned over to the sheriff's office. In fact, there were so many agencies eventually pulled into this case. This case was investigated by the Cal Poly campus police, the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Office, the District Attorney's Office, the FBI, along with private investigators and the California Department of Justice. Add to that the California Rescue Dog Association. And unfortunately, this resulted in scattered pieces of the investigation, scattered throughout these different investigations. Truly, this was delayed justice. It was, in my opinion, a ship without a rudder. And delays in such investigations are very damaging. Crucial evidence is missed by natural deterioration. And keep in mind, evidence can be covered up in those crucial first moments. Along with the delay was the failure to take her disappearance seriously. You see, my friend, what was obvious to her friends and those who knew her best, that was overlooked by investigators. My friend, just consider this incident report. This was filed by the campus police 3.5 weeks after her disappearance. Now, this investigative incident report, it describes, quote, a missing adult after strange circumstances. My friend, while she was an adult, you and I need to keep in mind she was someone's daughter who was a college student, lived with her parents when she was not on campus. But now, get this, the incident went on to report, quote, that we do not think it looks like Kristin was a victim of a crime. Did you hear that? The incident report said we do not think it looks like Kristin was a victim of a crime. Are you kidding me? Any amateur armchair investigator could tell that she was likely a victim of crime. The stuff she would never leave she left behind. The last person to see her alive had a black eye and scratches. Those that knew her best, well, they knew that she would not just vanish. Her parents heard from her every Sunday. Every Sunday they would get a phone call from her. They did not call that Sunday. And then there were those dogs that hid on the room. How any officer could put into words that it looks like Kristin was not the victim of a crime, well, my friend, that officer should not be left on a police force of any kind. You can now see how this investigation is flawed from the very start. On top of that, there are more instances of law enforcement failures sad to say. Take the example of an earlier search of Paul's home. That's where his father, Reuben Flores, lives. Now remember, it appeared that her body could have well been buried under his deck at one time. But in that early search of the home, they went there with a search warrant. The police arrived. They left only a couple of hours later. Now get this, only finding 3 articles about Kristin missing. One was hidden under Reuben's mattress, another under Paul's mattress, another in the kitchen. By the way, by them hiding the articles, it appears they felt the police would be coming. Doesn't it appear that way to you? However, now get this, in this crucial early search, even though they had a search warrant, there was no forensic team brought to the house. There were no cadaver dogs brought to the house. There was not even an effort to search and go over the vehicles, which no doubt a vehicle would have been used in moving Kristin's body. In fact, hang on to your hat. These vehicles would not be found and finally searched in a proper way until January the 29th, 2021, 25 years later. There was possible physical evidence also overlooked in the case. That was found on Susan's, Paul's mom's property. There was an earring found by a renter of the property, an earring that many believed could have belonged to Kristin, and it had a smudge on the back that looked like blood. My friend, here's a moment where DNA could have been used. Now this earring, it was turned right over to investigators. But when investigators were pressured to produce the evidence, that was by the civil attorneys that Kristin's family had to hire to do a civil case because the police were not doing their job. Well, when it came to turning over that evidence, they reported they had lost it. Did you hear that? They had lost it. They later stated they did not feel it was connected to the case, even though they did not even bother to bring it to Kristin's parents to see if they recognized it as her earring. And there were pictures of Kristin wearing something that looked almost identical to that earring. Now the sheriff's office, they said that was incorrect, that the earring appeared to be something a child would wear, but others said it was something that a college girl would wear. But my friend, we will really never know, will we? Because the sheriff's office thought so little of this possible evidence, they either threw it away or they lost it. My friend, even if they did not believe that it belonged to Kristin, you would still test this type of evidence just in case it was. It would have tied Paul directly to Kristin's murder. Then there was even an eyewitness. An eyewitness that saw 2 people in the early morning hours on the campus in a struggle. This witness was riding a bike after spending time studying, and early in the morning on his way home, he saw 2 individuals that he actually identified with the physical characteristics that matched almost to the point, both Paul and Kristin. And the investigator, well, he terminated that piece of evidence. Why? Well, he did not think it reflected on the case. Again, incredibly shoddy investigations. Who else would it have been around the time that she was last seen with Paul? At least find out who it was. But again, evidence not taken seriously by the police. No wonder somebody made the comment. They said, quote, "It looked like police was treating this case like a stolen bicycle instead of the rape and a murder of a precious young girl." I could go on with additional information, but I've said enough that you can now realize why it's taken so long to bring this case to court. And my friend, it was only through the persistent, now get this, of serious law enforcement that came to the rescue of this case, along with a public, consistent push for justice, that this case is where it is now. As early investigators were pushed out and replaced by dedicated investigators, along with the help of the public, there is now a strong case going to the jury. Now, hopefully, we've learned from mistakes, and at least because now there's a Kristin Smart Campus investigation law that has been passed, and now departments They should be prepared to take on such cases. In that investigation, or in that rather legislation, it states that there needs to be a clear leading agency and a quick response, and all of that will be keys to solving future such cases. Now, there is an incredible lesson for us to pass to our young adults in this case. I cannot leave the podcast without saying this. If you're out having a good time, do not leave anyone vulnerable to predators that are all out there. They're out there. Believe me, they're out there. Even now, they're out there. Never allow someone to have to walk alone in the early morning hours, under the influence or not. Always be aware of your surroundings. And if those with you are not, be a real friend. Take charge of their safety. Their life may depend upon it. Now, there's plenty more to come in this trial. There's still weeks ahead of evidence that's going to be presented, and then there will be a defense that's presented as well. And we're going to do our best to keep you updated, even though we may pursue other true crimes in the days ahead. So, let me ask you, take time to share the podcast. Get caught up on other material regarding the case with our past several podcasts, if you've not yet heard them. Go to your podcast platform and just put in the search bar, Charlie Crimebuster. You'll find us on just about any platform you go on. Or you can go to PeacemakerNetwork.com. That's PeacemakerNetwork.com. And you can get access to over 100 crime podcasts that we have produced that you can listen to. So until this time, next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. For the life you save, my friend, it may be your very own.